October 22nd, 1907. One of New York's biggest institutions, Knickerbocker Trust Company, slammed its door on depositors, denying them access to their deposits. The line outside stretched around the block. That single move sent shockwaves through the banking system, igniting a nationwide crisis. Within weeks, the stock market had lost nearly half its value from the year before. Clearinghouses, bank associations that pooled resources, partially suspended cash payments in 73 cities. There was no Federal Reserve. There was no government institution that could step in. There was one man. He was 70 years old, and he was about to do something that would change the American financial system forever. On October 17, 1907, there was a violent break in the United Copper Stock. F. Augustus Heinze, president of the Mercantile National Bank, had attempted to corner the copper market. The corner failed catastrophically. The investors' failed attempt to corner the copper market led to a major run of withdrawals on the trust companies and banks associated with Heinze and Morse. Fear began to spread as more people wondered whether their own banks had made similarly risky loans to investors, and thus whether they could meet their withdrawal requests. Depositors across numerous New York trust companies withdrew their money en masse, while other banks started to recall their reserves from Wall Street to protect themselves against runs on their own deposits. The panic was spreading, and it was spreading through a part of the financial system that had almost no regulation and no safety net: the trust companies. Just as the crisis of 2007 originated in runs on the shadow banking system, a relatively new and unregulated source of lending funded by liabilities that were uninsured, the panic of 1907 originated in runs on a newly popular form of financial intermediary, trust companies, which faced little regulation and offered deposits that were not insured. Sound familiar? The architecture of 1907 and 2008 was identical: unregulated, uninsured, and connected to everything. By Friday, October 18th, a run had begun at the Knickerbocker Trust Company, New York's third largest trust, when it was reported that Knickerbocker's president, Charles Barney, was an associate of Heinze and Morse. A request for aid was made to J.P. Morgan. He asked Benjamin Strong, then a vice president at Bankers Trust, and later the first head of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, to examine Knickerbocker's books and determine its financial condition. In the short period of time available, Strong could make no definitive determination of Knickerbocker's solvency. Morgan therefore refused to aid the trust. On October 22nd, Knickerbocker underwent a run for 3 hours before suspending operations just after noon, having paid out $8 million in cash. The doors closed. Like the collapse of Lehman in 2008, Knickerbocker's failure further eroded confidence in trusts and propelled panic throughout the financial markets as the trusts were forced to call loans and liquidate assets at fire sale prices in a desperate effort to raise cash. The panic of 1907 had its Lehman moment. On November 14th, Charles T. Barney of the Knickerbocker Trust Company committed suicide. J.P. Morgan, the financial titan who started the bank that still holds his name, at 70 became a one-man de facto central bank, summoning bank leaders to his private library on Madison Avenue in Manhattan. Morgan summoned the trust company presidents to his library and quietly locked the front doors. He was determined to resolve the crisis that evening. Since the United States had no central bank, Morgan and his colleagues needed to raise millions of dollars in loans from solvent banks. He ordered them to open their books, lock the doors, and refused to let anyone leave until they pledged millions to keep the system afloat. He summoned dozens of the leading financiers in New York to his private library on Madison Avenue and essentially ordered them to contribute to a $25 million pool that would be used to backstop the system. Then he locked them in and made them stay there through the night until they all agreed to his plan. The plan worked. Morgan also arranged a $30 million purchase of New York City bonds to help the city cover its own payroll. He had personally stopped the collapse of the American financial system. At the age of 70, in his private library, over one night. Morgan's intervention worked, but it left Washington and the entire country deeply uncomfortable. His dramatic intervention restored short-term confidence, but it also exposed a troubling truth. The U.S. financial system rested not on public authority, but on the will and judgment of a few powerful men. Some powerful people in Washington wondered, what about the next panic? Do we really want the fate of the U.S. economy to hinge on one rich guy in New York? A political cartoon published in Puck magazine captured the moment perfectly. The title, "The Central Bank. Why should Uncle Sam establish one when Uncle Pierpont is already on the job?" Senator Nelson Aldrich of Rhode Island, chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, was blunt about it. The United States could not depend on any single private citizen, however formidable, to prevent financial catastrophe. Congress grasped the absurdity immediately. Something had to be built, and Senator Aldrich, the most powerful senator in America, was going to build it. Congress moved quickly. Congress responded by passing stopgap legislation, the Aldrich-Vreeland Act of 1908, until more thorough actions could be prepared. The act established the National Monetary Commission, a congressional body tasked with studying banking systems across the world and recommending reforms. Senator Aldrich led the commission personally. He traveled to Europe. He studied the Bank of England, the German Reichsbank, the Bank of France. He came back convinced that America needed a central bank. But he also knew something critical. The word bank was toxic in American politics. Andrew Jackson had killed the monster bank in 1832. The word central was equally toxic. Concentrated power in the hands of Eastern elites had been the defining fear of American politics since the Republic was founded. Whatever Aldrich built, it could not look like a central bank, even if that was exactly what it was. In November 1910, 3 years after the Panic of 1907, Senator Aldrich put his plan into action. He gathered 6 men on a private railway car in New Jersey: Nelson Aldrich, Arthur Shelton, Abraham Piatt Andrew, Henry Davison of J.P. Morgan, Frank Vanderlip of National City Bank, and Paul Warburg. They used only first names. They called themselves the First Name Club. Over 9 days at the Jekyll Island Club, the same club founded in part by the same J.P. Morgan whose library had just saved the financial system, they drafted what would become the Federal Reserve Act. The direct line from the Panic of 1907 to Jekyll Island is documented and unambiguous. The same men who had benefited most from the unregulated system, the same banking interests represented by Davison and Vanderlip, were now designing its replacement. As we showed you in video 4, Aldrich later admitted on the record that if Congress had known who actually wrote the bill, it never would have become law. The Panic of 1873 destroyed millions of Americans. It created Rockefeller, Carnegie, Vanderbilt, and Morgan. Morgan used the fortune built on those ruins to dominate American finance for 30 years. In 1907, the system he dominated collapsed around him, and he personally saved it. That moment made Congress so uncomfortable, they passed the Aldrich-Vreeland Act. That act created the National Monetary Commission. Aldrich led that commission to Jekyll Island. On Jekyll Island, Paul Warburg designed the Federal Reserve. Paul Warburg, whose family had founded M.M. Warburg in Hamburg in 1798, whose brother Max was simultaneously advising the Kaiser. The Rothschilds had funded both sides of the Napoleonic Wars. The Warburgs funded both sides of World War I, and the institution Warburg designed on Jekyll Island, financed by the Morgan interests, shaped by the Rockefeller interests, signed by Woodrow Wilson 2 days before Christmas 1913, is still running the American economy today. 112 years later, the architecture never changes. J.P. Morgan died on March 31, 1913, 9 months before the Federal Reserve Act was signed. He never saw the institution his panic had made inevitable. His private library, where the most important financial meeting in American history took place on one November night in 1907, still stands today on Madison Avenue in New York City. It operates as a museum. You can visit it. They'll even show you the room where he locked the bankers in. Morgan saved the system. The system he saved was replaced by the system his crisis demanded. And the system that replaced it, built in secret on an island off the coast of Georgia, has been running without a full audit for over 100 years. Andrew Jackson tried to kill the bank in 1832. They built it back. Ron Paul tried to audit it in 1983. The doors are still closed. The vault gets richer. And somewhere, always somewhere, something else is burning. Next video, the Sherman Antitrust Act, the law that was supposed to break up the robber barons, what it actually did, and the men who made sure it didn't work. Subscribe to Vault and Ruin. We go where the money went.